Hello, this is Meghnad and you're watching Sansad Watch, where we tell you what the leaders you elected have been doing for you. From the videos you saw, you must have guessed what we are going to talk about today. Climate change. The year has not even ended and we have witnessed a ton of natural calamities already. We saw flash floods in Uttarakhand in February. The states of Assam and Bihar also flooded as usual. Excessive and sporadic rainfall happened in the hills, and of course there was cyclone Yas and Tauktae. Experts say that these events and more around the world are only going to increase as the earth warms up and climate change continues its death march. A question was raised in Parliament about this in the last session. MP Binoy Vishwam asked whether the government has taken cognizance of the adverse impact of climate change, whether it results in recurring natural disasters, and if any study has been conducted to see the impact. The government said observations indicate that incidences of extreme weather conditions have increased across the globe, including India, in the recent decades. However, there is no established study for India providing a quantified contribution of climate change triggering natural disasters. But guess what? We do have a study which does exactly that. It's called the IPCC report. But before we get to that very revealing report, we need to get down to the basics a bit. Today, we are going to try and answer two main questions. What is climate change and how does it affect us? And number two, what is the government doing about it? First up, what the heck is climate change? For the uninitiated, it's very simple. Humans want things, so they make things. While making these things, we pollute the environment. And as we want more things, we end up polluting more because we want all the things. Doing this over the last 100 years has resulted in humans putting a lot of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. On top of this, we have been indiscriminately getting rid of trees, which are like nature's air purifiers. Now that is a product that Hema Malini should endorse. As a result of trees not having their own brand ambassadors, not doing proper PR and getting cut as a result, the temperature all over the earth is increasing. It's their own damn fault for not being able to market themselves better. All of this in turn is leading to a change in the climate and causing weird weather events. Like this.
People don't really understand it until you actually see it coming at you in a wall of flame.
At the beginning of 2020, an insane fire raged through Australia, which burned through a land area that is as big as Iceland. Yeah. Some places in the world are quite literally on fire, while others are getting very, very wet, like our neighbor Bangladesh. With rising sea levels, it is estimated that in 30 years, 1 in every 7 people in Bangladesh will be affected by climate change, forcing them to be displaced. That's 1.8 crore people. And India is not immune to this.
As we speak, there is a powerful storm slamming into eastern India. It could be the worst the area has seen in 20 years. It's Cyclone Amphan, and it has just made landfall within the last hour near India's border with Bangladesh.
So yeah, a lot of people will move as a result of climate change, and that would mean massive changes in the world as we know it. Some places on Earth will become unlivable and entire towns and cities will be displaced. Looking at all this, the world came together in Paris in 2015 for the COP summit. 196 countries collectively decided that they would try and contain the global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. They were like, shit is about to hit the fan in slow motion. So let's maybe just try not to let that shit hit the fan. Maybe? Yeah. So in August this year, 234 scientists racked their brains together by reading over 14,000 research papers to prepare a 3,949-page consolidated report to tell us about the state of climate change. The report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC report, said something very important. We are Humans have up the earth. That's it. That's the report. Okay, bye. Okay, maybe not so dramatically, but more or less on the same lines.
Climate change is now rapid, widespread, and intensifying. That is according to a devastating report by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which warns that many human-caused effects are now irreversible. The UN Secretary General called the findings a code red for humanity, adding that it must be a death knell for coal and fossil fuels.
It got so bad that it used to be climate change and it is now a climate crisis. The report says 4 things. 1. Our target to keep the warming of our planet within 1.5 degrees Celsius of pre-industrial levels will be breached by the year 2040 itself. Number 2. Scientists say that extreme weather events such as cyclones and floods are actually happening because of the climate crisis. Number 3. The report says that some of the effects of climate change are now almost irreversible. And number 4. Humans are responsible for all of this. The IPCC report talks about India too. It talks about the massive floods in Chennai in 2015 and attributes it to the warming trend in the Bay of Bengal and the strong El Nino conditions. It even mentions the Kedarnath floods and says that extreme weather events such as glacial outbreaks, like this one in Kedarnath, are likely to increase. Coastal floods, which earlier took place once in 50 years in our country, are now predicted to happen 3 times in 1 year. The IPCC report says when the average temperature rises by a couple of degrees, the duration and intensity of the heat waves would rise across India, especially in metro cities. Delhi, for example, could witness an average temperature rise of 5.3 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. To put things into perspective, the highest temperature ever recorded in Delhi is 48 degrees Celsius in 2019. I think it's safe to assume that all the people in Delhi will be doing this in another 100 years.
You know how to crack an egg? There you go. Whoa! Whoa, it's cooking!
The report makes similar predictions for cities like Hyderabad and Kolkata, which could see a rise of 4.7 and 4.5 degrees Celsius in their mean temperatures. As a result of the increase in temperatures, monsoons would become more intense and shorter. Apart from the obvious consequences such as flooding, a situation like this would also be a huge blow to our economy. A report by Deloitte has pointed out that if we continue at our current pace, the climate crisis could lead to economic losses of more than $6 trillion in present value terms by 2050. And because India is heavily dependent on agriculture, weather changes will affect crop cycles and that can be catastrophic for our economy. Both farm incomes and wheat yield could reduce by up to 25% within the next 50 years. The scope of damage the climate crisis can do is truly very unreal, which brings us to our second question. What is our government doing about it? Now, India's stand on the climate crisis has been pretty consistent over the years. We are saying that developed countries are largely to blame. It's like America is chain smoking in a closed room and India is sitting in the corner, coughing her lungs out and getting cancer. And it's true, India's share in overall emissions since the past 200 years has been just 3%. In comparison, the US is at 25% and the European Union is at 22%. For a country that is home to 1.3 billion plus people, we have one of the lowest carbon footprints in the world. Even the international community has acknowledged this. But that doesn't mean we are raising our hands and we're like, हाँ, तो हम क्या करें? ये अमेरिका को बोलो ना कि फूकना बंद करे, हैं? We have actually chosen some mild targets for ourselves in the Paris Agreement to combat the climate crisis. India said that we would reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 35% of our GDP by 2030, increase non-fossil fuel power capacity to 40%, and add a carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons. And guess what? We are actually outperforming. As of July 2021, India had 39% non-fossil fuel installed capacity. In other words, India is poised to achieve its capacity target a decade early. In fact, by 2030, we might actually hit the 60-65% mark. मतलब we are full शर्मा जी का बेटा now. जरूर IIT जाएंगे हम. But don't celebrate too much, because there is one particular target we have decided not to set. That is to become a net zero emission country. Net zero emission means doing these two things. You see, it's about cutting down on polluting the environment by using clean renewable energy and growing our forest cover, which acts as a carbon sink for the amount of pollution we are producing. The balance between the two is what a net zero situation is. And while other countries like China have done it, India has not set a net zero emission target. In addition to this, while India is trying to expand its renewable energy production, it is not clamping down on the use of traditional fossil fuels like coal. India's coal production has been increasing and is on track to produce a record high 700 metric tons of coal by the end of this year. The government has also increased the import of coal by 12.6% and is providing nearly 35% more subsidy on coal than on renewable sources of energy. So while we are hitting mild targets, our policy towards the climate crisis seems to be completely out of whack. It is because of this behavior that India's climate action has been classified as highly insufficient according to the Climate Action's tracker rating system. The truth is, India as a country is now polluting with high intensity and has become the world's third largest greenhouse gas polluter at the moment. We also happen to be the 7th worst hit country by extreme weather events. So yeah, as the second most populated country on the planet, we have a bigger role to play in combating the climate crisis. And from what it seems like, our government also realizes this and is working towards it. But is it enough? That is the question I leave you with. That's all I have for you in this week's episode. Remember, if you want to make Parliament great again, you need to watch it first. Thank you so much for watching this episode, guys, and we have new merch. We have masks now. See, News Laundry ka logo bhi hai is pe. So go to our website and look at the store page. There is where you will find this and a lot of other things like mugs and tote bags and soaps and t-shirts. So yeah, go there and do that.
We, being an independent platform, depend on our readers, viewers and listeners. Support independent media by subscribing to News Laundry. Go to newslaundry.com, click on the subscribe button at the top and pay to keep news free.